Welcome to Tower Technicians. What if you could hang out with experienced tower technicians, industry leaders, and decision makers? Ask them about their experiences, habits, concerns, and frustrations. Then, take an insight or two to guide your own career growth. Each week, Darren Wagner shares an in-depth look at the lives of people in wireless telecom who are always working hard to close the digital divide. His hope is to show you how you can stay safe, grow your career, and reach your fullest potential within the industry. DW is an experienced tower technician who has become an industry leader over the last 3 decades. His goal is to bridge the gap between tower technicians and decision makers within wireless telecom. Now, here's DW.
Welcome back to another episode of Tower Technicians. Guys, I just want to throw as much at you as possible. And this episode is going to be different in a lot of ways. It's going to be different in ways that may raise your level of awareness of things that happen in the industry. And I'm excited to bring this episode to you. You know, we bring a lot of different topics to you as often as we possibly can. And we want to be real, we want to be relevant, and we want to achieve our purpose. And that purpose is to bridge the gap between workforce, contractors, and industry leaders. And that's truly what we're after. So this week we're at NATE, and I had the privilege of actually interviewing Todd Schlekeway with NATE, who is the CEO. And I just want you guys to have an open mind. I know there's a lot of people who follow NATE out there, a lot of members, but there's also a large community out there that are not aware of NATE, or even worse, have made some judgment on NATE without actually investigating everything that NATE offers. So I'd like for you guys at least to give it a chance, hear them out, listen to what they have to offer, and just, you know, do your homework and see all the resources that are provided in this industry, and a lot of them are provided because of NATE. So check it out. Todd, why don't we start off with giving us some background about you and, you know, how you landed at NATE and how it's going for you.
Well, first of all, Darren, it's a pleasure to join you and Brock on the podcast. I've listened to numerous podcasts, and I think it's a great way to reach the tower technician community, which of course NATE cares deeply about. How did I land with NATE? Kind of an interesting story. I am coming up on 11 years with NATE, and what a remarkable ride. I've learned an awful lot about an industry I've come to love. When I was first hired, I was hired primarily due to my background in the legislative and regulatory arena, public affairs, marketing arena. And the hiring committee at the time, Darren, said, you know, you can learn this industry. Little did I know just how much there was to learn. But the blessing when you're in a role like I have, or our NATE staff is in, is literally at the palm of our fingertips. It's one phone call and one email away from the best subject matter experts in the country.
Yeah.
Are amongst our membership. And so I've learned an awful lot, and you wouldn't know it when I was getting my harness on, but believe it or not, 2 years into the job back in 2014, I went through a 3-day authorized climber rescue training in Virginia. And it was a great experience. Just don't ask me to rescue anyone today.
We got that covered. By the way, let me help you out here. Put it on.
There we go.
There you go. All right. Because if you do happen to fall, we don't want to tear a rotator cuff. Yeah. All right. So, first question for you. We have a few questions. Like I mentioned, the purpose of this podcast is to bridge the gap between the workforce, contractors, and industry leaders. And you guys are right in the mix of that. You're doing a lot of good work on that.
So could you tell us some things that Nate's doing to help bridge that gap?
Yeah, that's a great question, Darren. And first and foremost, I would say, Nate is deeply committed to our mission, and that's safety. And, if you look at our committees and ad hoc committees that we have under the association's umbrella, a large percentage of them are safety centric. And it's because, our mission when we were founded remains the same today. And that's, we want to make sure the men and women who work in this industry at Heights are able to go home. And so, we have a safety and education committee, an OSHA relations committee, an SEMC committee, a UAS committee, and I could go right down the list. All of those initiatives and committees are designed to produce resources, documents, best practices, and standards that lead to a safer industry. And, one area I'd like to highlight, Darren, is, Nate has a Nate OSHA FCC National Strategic Partnership. We have about, 88 member companies right now are participating in that. And we're at the point now where we're collecting more and more site safety audit data that's going to help us lead and decide, okay, what are the deficiencies on site? What training resources need to be developed? And so that partnership's really starting to pay dividends because we're starting to get data that we can do something with.
Yeah.
And, many of our members here today have been longtime participants in the STAR initiative. And I think we have 188 member companies this year in the STAR program.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yep.
Good thing. So education, how about advocacy? Anything on advocacy?
Yeah, I mean, from an advocacy perspective, Darren, I'm really proud of the strides Nate has made in terms of our work in Washington, D.C. Whether it's with federal agencies like the Department of Labor, OSHA, the FCC, the FAA, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, NTIA, Small Business Administration, you name it, the more diverse our membership gets and the more technical the work of the technicians get, it seems like the more policy issues and agencies that we interact with. And the same rings true for Congress. We are now, touching more policy issues in the congressional arena. And so it's a powerful story to tell, to walk into a member of Congress office or a government agency office and tell what the men and women who deploy, maintain, and build our infrastructure and communications networks do on a daily basis. Everyone can relate to that on a certain level, Darren, because everyone has a smartphone. Yep. Everyone went through COVID where they didn't need to leave their house for connectivity. And so we try to connect the dots every time we're speaking, every time we're advocating on Nate's behalf. We connect those dots and really bring it down to, look, this work is essential to your livelihood.
Yeah.
And to virtually every sector of the economy.
No doubt. I agree. I think, some of the things that I like to tell my people is, society would not exist. Society as we know it right now would not exist without the men and women doing what we do. And so to your point, we touch every aspect. I mean, we talk about the most important people in society. If you're talking about doctors, if you're talking about lawyers, congressmen, senators, the president of the United States, anybody, they cannot do their job without us doing what we do. So, excellent point. Is there something going on in May that we should talk about?
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing it up, Darren. Nate is excited. May 16th and 17th, we're going to have our second Nate member congressional fly-in in Washington, D.C. We're really going to start ramping up promotion of that after Nate Unite here. But it's really a time for us to bring our members together, get meetings scheduled with their respective members of Congress and their Senate delegations, and really, again, tell our industry story.
Right.
And our members, their employees, they're better advocates because they're from those states, they're from those districts, and they have employees, they have businesses. And so we're going to tell our story in a big way at this fly-in in May. So the thing I would say is to NATE members is consider sending someone from your company, because we will brief you. You don't have to be intimidating. All politics is local, and we have a great story to tell at the local level.
Yeah. So not only are you advocating in Washington, and we're going to do this fly-in, but you're also advocating at the industry leader level.
Yeah.
You guys are doing, you've done part of the C-suite tour. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's really been a great effort by NATE, and kudos to our board of directors for supporting it. So every 2 or 3 years, Darren, we go on what we call a national C-suite tour, and we meet with the top executives of the top 4 carriers, the wireless carriers that we all know and that our members work for, and the top 4 vertical real estate companies.
Yeah.
And it's an opportunity to tell the stories and to talk about what's going on in the field from a contractor perspective, from a technician perspective. So we don't shy away from some of the hard conversations around matrix pricing.
Yeah.
And some of the workforce issues that our members, your company, and so many others experience. Some of the safety trends that we're seeing, we have those discussions. And the beauty is those companies, you know, they're such drivers of this industry.
Yeah.
You know, they drive the industry. That our contractors, our customer, are there, you know, they're our customers. And so they're also NATE members. So, you know, we have the hard conversations about what we'd like to see changed, but it's a mutual dialogue, very respectful dialogue. And so I think what I'd like NATE members to take away, and the tower techs listening, is we are telling your story at the highest levels.
Yeah.
You know, we may not see the change that we want or that NATE wants, that our board wants. Certainly we're not going to see it overnight, but we aren't shying away from those discussions. And I want people to know that.
Yeah, and it's important that people know that, because I feel like there's a lot of people that don't realize how much you guys advocate for contractors and workforce. And so the fact that you guys are not only advocating at a Washington, D.C. level, but you're advocating to the industry leaders, carriers, tower owners, you know, and the pain points that are associated with being a contractor and being in the workforce, matrix pricing, wages, all that type of stuff. You guys are addressing it. You're having the hard conversation. So I certainly appreciate that. And I wanted to share the concern of getting that out to everyone and making sure that everyone knows what you guys are doing. So
thank you, Darren.
So one more question for you that would be beneficial for the workforce and contractors. Are there any trends that you're seeing, anything that we should be thinking about for as now we're starting 2023? What should we be thinking about when it comes to trends?
Yeah, one of my takeaways, and I think one of the A topics at NATE Unite this week, Darren, is, look, we're coming off a pretty big spike the last several years in work. We had the carriers deploying their spectrum that they spent billions of dollars on. We've had drop and swaps with, you know, the decommissioning of the Sprint, you know, work. But I think one of the takeaways we've talked about at the board level is, you know, the more contractors can diversify their customer base, the better, because those of you, Darren, you included, who've been in the industry a long time, you know there's ebbs and flows, there's upturns and there's downturns. And what we're hearing is there may be a few of the major customers out there who are going to slow down a little from a CapEx perspective. Yeah. So one of the takeaways I think I want our members to go with is, you know, we're in a great industry. We all know that. But the more you can diversify your customer base, the better off in the long run.
Yeah. That's good information for all of us to know, because it helps us to strategize with our own businesses.
Yep.
That's really good. Anything else that you think that we need to address from an industry perspective, just to wrap this thing up?
Yeah, I think getting back to workforce development, Darren, and you've been a very active leader on some of our workforce initiatives, and we appreciate that. You know, NATE is working really hard. We're investing a lot into our workforce development. And, I wish we could wave a magic wand and solve that workforce shortage overnight.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. But what we are doing, from a curriculum perspective, Darren, we have a Tower Tech 1 turnkey curriculum now that I think 5 or 6 community colleges around the country are running our program.
Mm-hmm.
And our goal is to create 2 or 3 more of those programs a year. Yeah. And so why is that important? If you get more programs in those community college technical school pathways, they will help market your industry. They all have marketing representatives. They all have admissions officers. It's like a big, bright marquee.
Yeah.
You could be a Tower Tech if you come here.
Right.
And our curriculum is tailor-made. It's 8 to 12 weeks. Colleges can run it for credit, non-credit, as an apprenticeship model. And so we really want to invest and grow and cultivate more relationships with the technical schools, community colleges. That's one. Number 2, there's a tie wrap booth on the floor here. And some of the companies, the apprenticeship model is really a good fit for them. They continue to enroll more companies into their apprenticeship model. That's an option for NATE members. And then number 3, our investment into the Vertical Freedom movie last year, the documentary film, was a major investment into trying to market our industry outside of our industry. It's our opportunity to market our industry to the mainstream. And we've been able to do that by hosting free showings around the country. It's now available on many of the prominent video on demand platforms. We're hoping later this year to sell it to one of the streaming platforms. So we're trying and investing in things like that to get our industry out in the public mainstream, so that maybe someone decides, hey, that there's a career pathway in that industry. That's a good fit for me, or that's a good fit for my son or daughter. And so we're making those investments. It's just going to take time.
Yeah. Yeah. And to your point, the mainstream needs to have these things brought up. They need to be made aware of this stuff, because everyone knows that, how a cell phone works, or they know that they have a cell phone, but they really don't know how it works and all the people behind it. So it's a perfect opportunity to get it out there and do some education to mainstream.
Yep.
Excellent. Okay. Well, anything else that you want to?
No, I want to give a shout out to you and Brock, Darren. I've listened to several of your podcasts, and I'll listen to more when I work out and when I'm on those work trips, those flights.
Yeah.
And I think you have a very important platform and medium to bridge the gap that you talked about at the onset of the podcast. Let's get these messages to the Tower Techs. NATE is their ally. That's the message I want to drive. And you have a powerful medium here where we can partner and we can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Todd, I appreciate your time today. I appreciate you climbing up and doing this in front of NATE Unite 23. And we had an awesome time. So I appreciate you, Todd. Good job.
Thanks, Darren.
All right.
Thank you, Brock.
All right, so what'd you think about that? It was a little bit different. We were on the tower. We try to get on the tower as much as we can, but in this case, we're on the tower in the middle of a showroom floor with a large audience. There was a lot of suppliers and exhibitors on the floor, and from what I'm understanding, it was one of the largest shows that NATE has had up to now. So a lot of attendees, and so it was a little bit of a different situation for us, because we wanted to talk to our audience on the podcast, but we also had an audience there down on the floor level. So it was pretty interesting for us. Some key takeaways I want you guys to check out, or you could rewind, listen to it again. But first of all, NATE's made of a lot of committees. I mean, NATE has a small staff compared to the amount of people that are actually contributing to NATE. Their staff is small. Todd is he's the leader, he's the CEO over there, and they have, some other members of the staff, but NATE is actually built by a lot of volunteers. And guys, volunteers don't get paid. So, I've heard some hate towards NATE in the past, and you gotta keep into perspective that most of the people who are involved in NATE are volunteers. So I would challenge you that if you ever have any second doubts, or if you have some hate towards NATE, I would challenge you to get involved and see what it's all about. Because these are truly amazing people. And it's not about picking sides. There seems to be this division in the industry right now where either you're, pro NATE, or, there's other organizations out there that are kind of drawing people to their side of the line. And obviously, the mission of this podcast is to erase that line and create some unity in the industry, right? So, but some key takeaways, the committees. He mentioned some committees, and there's hundreds of volunteers, and I want you guys to just I wanted to drive that point home with you guys. There's hundreds of volunteers that put a lot of work into this stuff. As a matter of fact, I'm one of them. So I recognize how much blood, sweat, and tears go into all of the different efforts that NATE, all of the different things that NATE does for our industry. So volunteers is one big thing. He also touched on education. NATE has led the way when it comes to safety and technical education. And so you heard him talk about that. A big thing that they do is advocacy. They not only advocate for our industry in Washington, D.C. and with government agencies, but they're also advocating for us with industry leaders. And when I say us, I'm talking about workforce and I'm talking about contractors. They're doing this C-suite tour. You heard them talk about that, where in the tour that they're doing is with the executives at the carrier level and tower owner level. So they're asking the hard questions, and they're advocating for workforce and contractors. So just keep that in mind. And when they're having these conversations, they're talking about safety issues. They're talking about workforce issues. They're talking about matrix pricing. So they're having these conversations. Now, maybe we're not seeing the results that we want to see, but you got to give credit where credit's due. They are going out there, they're putting the work in, they're advocating for the industry, and that deserves some credit. So I will tell you that I'm impressed by it. The other thing you heard Todd talk about is the trends. One thing that he kind of recommended is maybe as contractors we need to start thinking about diversifying because of the ebbs and flows of the industry. Some of the CapEx spending may get pulled back a little bit. So just something to think about. And that's another example of, if you're a member of NATE, you have access to information that maybe other people who are non-members don't have. And so it gives you somewhat of an advantage when you need to make critical decisions on strategic business decisions, and where you're allocating resources, where you're allocating capital. If you know this stuff is coming because you're affiliated with an association that feeds you the information, it's just another benefit. And I think the last point that Todd made was they really wanted to emphasize on workforce development. And so when it comes to getting curriculums into community colleges and this apprenticeship program that they were instrumental in helping with. And they also helped with this or led the way on putting this movie together to get out to mainstream. It's called Vertical Freedom. These are all initiatives that NATE has led the way on and they've actually put in place. And I think the big point that Todd made at the end was that speaking to the workforce, and he made it clear that NATE is your ally. And so I feel like he made a bold statement when he said that. and it goes a long way. And I think he wanted to drive that point home. And, I just recommend you guys, those of you who don't know about Nate, dig into it, check it out. Those of you who may have a little opinion or may have been told something that has swayed your opinion on a negative side, maybe you should consider digging into some of the positive things about Nate and check it out. I encourage you to do that. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. It was a little different, and I appreciate you guys tuning in every week. And so I ask you to share, subscribe, rate, and review. So we need you to spread this show. We need to get it out there, and we need and it's all about helping you guys, the workforce, the contractors, and the industry leaders. So the more that you guys spread this, the better we're going to get at it, and the more people it's going to reach, and the more unity we're going to have in the industry. I appreciate you guys. Until next time, we'll talk to you later.